chapter 8, verse 1. By making my pilgrimage to thee, thy all pervasiveness has been destroyed by me. With my meditation, thy transcendence of the mind has been destroyed. The transcendence of speech has been destroyed by my singing thy praise. Ever forgive me these three sins. And then Jyotiji says, Acharyaji, why did Dattatreya mention that transcending all three are sins and is now asking for forgiveness? Jyotiji, transcendence is not a sin. We need to reread the verse. On the contrary, destroying the transcendence is the sin being talked of. By making my pilgrimage to thee, thy all pervasiveness has been destroyed by me. The sin that he is referring to is pilgrimage. By making my pilgrimage to a particular location, I have acted as if you are not all pervasive. Do you see this? And this is the sin that he is poetically apologetic for. With my meditation, thy transcendence of the mind has been destroyed. Dattatreya is obviously not apologetic that the truth transcends the mind. He is rather begging forgiveness for indulging in the kind of meditation that involves the mind. He is saying that by meditating with the mind, I behaved as if the truth is something within the mind. I disrespected the transcendence of truth with respect to the mind. I forgot that the truth is beyond the mind. I started meditating with the mind. And what does it mean to meditate with the mind? It means to meditate with methods. All methods are of the mind and in the mind, whereas the truth transcends the mind. So when you use methods of meditation, you are actually committing a sin. But it takes a Dattatreya to acknowledge that sin and repent. Further, in meditation of the kind that we usually see, there is an object and an objective both. You say you are meditating on something. Now meditation has an object, and all objects are in the mind, whereas the truth transcends the mind. Now by meditating on something that is in the mind, you are trying to reach the truth or talk of truth. Dattatreya says this is a great falseness, a major mistake. Are you getting it? Then, just as there is an object of knowledge associated with knowledge, there is always a target of meditation associated with meditation. Gyan has Gyey and Dhyan has Dhyey. And if meditation always has an object, which means an objective really, a target really, aren't you belittling the truth? Dattatreya is saying, please forgive me, O Lord, that I believed in meditation. And there are those who take meditation and truth to be synonymous. Dattatreya is begging forgiveness that he ever meditated. To meditate is to destroy that transcendence which is the essence of truth. Then he says, thy transcendence of speech has been destroyed by my singing thy praise. Ever forgive me these three sins. That which transcends the speech, how can it be talked of? But not only are you emphatically, confidently, vividly talking of him, but also believing in your own talk. Your talk is so colorful, so spicy, as if the Lord, with all his characteristics, his descriptions, his forms and features, is standing like an object right in front of your dualistic eyes. And you sing praises to the Lord. To sing his praises is not very difficult from abusing him, because in both you are anyway belittling him, turning him into something very small, something very graspable, something at your own level. Dattatreya is saying, forgive me, O Lord, that I ever sung thy praises. You are beyond speech. Why did I ever talk of you? Talking of you as one with little and petty forms is a sin. And it's an equal sin to talk of you as great, as infinite, as immense, as compassionate, as merciful. Say that God is cruel and you are making a mistake. Equal is the mistake when you say God is compassionate. Mistake does not lie in saying A or B. Mistake lies in saying at all. Why did you open your mouth? Why did you give yourself the liberty of turning the profound into the profane? Even your praises are profanities. Just don't say anything. That requires a certain humility. That requires the head to be bowed down. Just don't say anything. So, Jyotiji, he is not talking of transcendence as sin, obviously. The sin is to ascribe those attributes that the attributeless can never really have. Which means each and all attributes that you associate with him are an encroachment an unauthorized encroachment on the divine realm. You are going where you should not go. You are talking of that which should not be talked of. You are thinking of yourself as that which you are not, and that is a sin. If you mistake God as something, it is first and foremost because you have taken yourself to be somebody. The more you are somebody, the more will be the temptation to turn God into something or somebody. Because you are so very body tempted, body identified, therefore you find it very attractive to turn God too into a bodied form. I am bodied. Why not give the God of mine a body as well? Well, because he is God, let me give him a more lustrous, a more magnificent, a more extraordinary, a more heavenly body. But let me certainly give him a body. I have 2 hands. Let my God have 10. But let him have hands. Please. And why should God have hands? Because you believe yourself to be handed. I have hands. Let my God have hands. Your God is nothing but a fanciful extrapolation of who you are. I have a few virtues and a few vices. Because God is God, he should have lots of virtues and no vices. But remember that the definition of God's virtues comes from you. If you decide that pity or power, being powerful, are virtues, then you will imbue your God with an excess of these virtues. My God is so merciful, so merciful, so merciful, And He has to be so merciful, so merciful, so merciful, because He is your God. If He is not so merciful, so merciful, so merciful, then your pride takes a beating. Because now somebody else's God can be better than your God. You are my God. You better be the best God. Are you getting it? That's the sin that you need to be apologetic for. Man has made a great mistake. A great and fundamental mistake. That mistake is called God. God is great. So even as a mistake, He is your greatest mistake. A few aspects of that mistake must be very clearly understood. First, you have situated divinity somewhere outside of yourself. You don't look into the mirror and say, here is God. Though even that would not be accurate. But please get the drift. Please see what I am saying. You are saying, here am I and there is God. That does not mean that giving a form or shape to God, only that is a mistake. Even to talk of God as a power residing in the heavens is an equal mistake. Even to talk of God as a creator behind the creation, behind the universe, is an equal mistake. Don't you see you are creating a schism? You have divided yourself from God. You have divided the creation from the creator. And now you have turned yourself forever into a godless person. And you have turned this earth into a godless place. Why? Because God resides in the heavens. So the earth has to be then godless. And sure enough, by your own declaration, the earth has become godless. Man, by creating God, has turned godless. It was all right as long as God created man. When God created man, then God and man were one. When man created God, then man and God became two. When God creates, He is the creation. But when you say that God has created, then you get the whole thing totally wrong. Because in your dualistic case, the creator and the creation are never one. So you impose this model on godliness as well. You say that when I create a pen, a piece of cloth, a pot or a shoe, then I am not the shoe. Similarly, when God created the earth, then God cannot be the earth. Such is man's stupidity. He must take the starting point as his own ego and then proceed from there to find the truth. What will he find? Nothing but various shapes, forms, and dances of the ego. You say, first of all, I know that what I am doing is the truth. So my starting point is I make a pot. So that is true, which means at the outset itself you have taken duality as the truth. I make the pot. And then you say, in a similar way God made the universe. Don't you say that the beginning is false and therefore all your conjectures, judgments, conclusions are going to be totally false. You are beginning from your own personal center, whereas truth is about dissolution of the personal center. There are very few like Dattatreya who realize this. They realize this and they apologize. Once they have apologized, they have gone beyond the mistake. Apology is such a powerful thing. Apologize for your mistake and you are no more the mistaken. Don't apologize for the mistake and you are making a bigger mistake. A mistake is really no mistake at all. But to be the mistaken one is a mistake for which there is no forgiveness. Are you getting it? Dattatreya is shredding apart the conventional, traditional, accepted, pervasive fabric of morality and spirituality. Established religions would not want to listen to him. He is saying, the moment I said that I am going for a pilgrimage, I destroyed that in service of which I wanted to be a pilgrim. What am I saying? That a particular geographical spot is more godly than other places? If that is the case with me, that only means that I'm still talking the language of time and space. And if I'm still talking the language of time and space, why am I setting out on the pilgrimage at all? Pilgrimage is for those who are pilgrims to the truth, our time and space truth. And by using time and space, by using geographical locations, are you going to dissolve geography? Yes, if that can happen, surely you must visit the important pilgrimage centers. But isn't it far more important, far more truthful to see holiness where you just now are? Tirthankar in Jainism is such a profound word. The one who is a creator of tirths. He is not a visitor to the tirths. He is a creator of tirths. Unless you are close to the dissolved state of the Tirthankar, all your pilgrimages are going to go waste. There are Tirthyatris and then there are Tirthankars. Who are you? Your very presence must be holy. The very spot where you breathe must be the center of all universe. The place from where you see must be the place from where all universes originate. Now when you walk, now when you go towards a particular place, you aren't really traveling, you aren't really a yatri. Because you know that the place has first of all originated from you. If it has originated from you, then you are going at most from yourself to yourself. Even if you are a yatri, it is a yatra with zero displacement. You have traveled, but you have not been displaced. You have gone from yourself to yourself. So, do visit all the hills, the Himalayas, the mountains, the great lakes, the jungles, the caves, the temples, the churches. Do go to far off places. To the Mecca, to Rome. But go only from yourself to yourself. The Tirthankars too were yatris. Many of them travelled so much, and yet they didn't move at all. In India, we have had the practice of coming to Ganga and then carrying Ganga Jal back to your place. That practice has been ridiculed and turned into a dead ritual. But please get the essence of that practice. It is a very established thing. Somebody who comes to the Ganga cannot return to his town or village without a bottle or can of Ganga Jal. In every Hindu house, you will find a liter or so of Ganga Jal necessarily kept. It is not purchased. It is brought by someone who went to the Ganga. Do you get the essence of this ritual? What is being said is, bring the Ganga back with you. Yes, you went to Ganga. Yes, you went to the pilgrimage center, to Haridwar or to Varanasi. Now, it is not sufficient that you merely went there. Your pilgrimage is complete only if the Ganga remains forever with you. If you go and come back and are again dry, then you never took a dip. So go there and bring the Ganga back with you. Bringing Ganga Jal back is symbolic. The Ganga should now be flowing in your heart. That is what the ritual symbolizes. But unfortunately, it has become just a dead ritual. People bring water back, not the Ganga. Bringing back water is not of much use. If you have come to the Ganga, now the Ganga should be yours. Now you should belong totally to the Ganga. You cannot come here like a tourist, watch it, have fun and frolic, enjoy some food on the banks, click pictures, and then go back. That is so immature and stupid. Now the Tirth is flowing in my heart. Now I am not a Tirth Yatri anymore. Now I am carrying the Tirth here in my center. Ganga has come back with me. Wherever I am, now Ganga is with me. Are you getting it? Come to the Ganga. Come as a pilgrim. Come as a pilgrim to destroy the one who set out on the pilgrimage. We have had the tradition of bidding farewell to the dead by the sides of the Ganga. People would make a funeral pyre by the Ganga. Do you know what that means? Come and die here. When people were about to die, they would rush from their homes to the Ganga. They would go to Prayag. They would say, if I die by the Ganga, then heaven is ascertained. Please understand the real meaning of that. Otherwise, it becomes a very empty ritual. Come and die. Come to the Ganga and die. The dead must not be brought to Ganga. That is of no use. That only pollutes the river. The living must be brought to Ganga to die. Come and die. That still happens. There are many old people. There are so many vridhashrams by the Ganga. It used to happen during the Kumbhs. People would come and leave their ailing parents or other old people and say, now you stay here. Now you don't go back to the village. Now stay here till you take your last breath. You anyway have a month or two to live. Come and die. The pilgrim must come. And the pilgrimage ends with the ending of the pilgrim himself. Pilgrimage must always be a one-way journey. You must come, but you should not be able to return. And that's why Dattatreya is begging forgiveness. The one who came here was a pilgrim. The one who must return is not the Tirthyatri. He must be the Tirthankar. What happened to the Yatri? There's the funeral pyre. He's dead. He's gone. The one who came here is gone. Gone and disposed of. So he is not returning. The one who is returning is totally different. The little one came, and you could say either that nobody is returning, or say that immensity is returning, or don't say anything at all. But for sure, the little one is not returning. Are you getting it? If the pilgrimage is successful, you should not return. You went as a localized body to the all-pervasive and lost your illusions there. Now sky has merged in the sky. Now the all-pervasive has met the all-pervasive. Now no event has happened because the all-pervasive cannot meet the all-pervasive. So you have moved from eventfulness to eventlessness. Your life used to be so eventful, and all the events used to shake you up. Now your life is eventless. Nothing happens at all. Nothing happens at all. Now you are like the Ganga. The Ganga keeps flowing. But has the Ganga ever flown away? There would be some who would say there is movement. And then there would be those who would say there is no movement at all. There was Ganga, there is Ganga, there would be Ganga. What has moved? Nothing has moved at all. Yes, the water appears to be moving. But is anything really moving? See, water has gone and water has arrived. What has moved? The riverness is intact. The river appears to be flowing. The river appears to be flowing only to those who focus on particular currents and waves. If you do not focus on particular currents and waves, there is no movement at all. The Ganga is movementless, eventless. What has changed? Water has gone and water has arrived. Is there a difference between the water drops that went away and the water drops that arrived? No difference at all. So the movement is only apparent. Nothing is really moving. Keep looking at the river and you'll realize that it is perfectly stationary. Please, I repeat this because I'm not sure that we really let this sink in. It's a very simple statement. You might even get bored of hearing it repeatedly, but I must repeat. Saying good things about that is as nonsensical as saying bad things. Obeying the Guru is as much of a blunder as is disobeying the Guru. Obedience requires your participation. Obedience requires your approval. Obedience means that the two are now in consensus. Which two? You and the Guru. There are still two. If they are not in consensus, in agreement, then you say there is disobedience. And if they are agreeing, they are in agreement, then you say that there is obedience. Whether you disobey or whether you obey, still there are two. Don't disobey. Don't obey. Don't say bad things. Don't say good things. Just remain silent. Just bow down instantaneously.